Hello, there, people. Welcome to our live show. This is Milad Resaeimanesh. I'm hosting this program. The other panelists of the seminar or the program is Zara Kay, my friends, my colleagues, and the person I really appreciate the thing that she's been doing regarding Islam and regarding the women's right and some other activities. The topic we would like to talk about today it's like a kind of like a controversial topic taking place these days in Scandinavia, specifically Denmark. As you guys most probably know, the government has sent a proposal to the parliament and trying to impose the ban of hijab at the schools for small children. Regarding this proposal, there was like a drone demonstration, I guess 4 or 5 days ago in Copenhagen. There was like a bunch of Islamists or like hijabis were in streets trying to protest against such proposal, saying like hijab is the right of the immigrants, banning hijab is racism and is denying the basic citizen rights of those people. There was like many videos regarding the protest, regarding demonstration being sent on YouTube and some other platforms. I mean, there's still like a big discussion regarding this proposal and this act by the Danish government. Like, what Scandinavia is supposed to do regarding the hijab rule, specifically for children. Is it all right to have small kid with a hijab, or hijab is discrimination and child abuse? Which one should comes first? Regarding this, as I said, controversial topic, we're gonna have a 1 hour discussion with Zara. Before Zara start the panel and start talking, I would like to remind that this program is now streamed live through YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. The podcast of the program will be produced. It will be published on Spotify. So please feel free to share it with your friends and anyone that you might think that they would like to hear what we're saying and what we're pointing out during this program. Hi there, Zara. Sorry for talking too much. What do you think about this whole scenario happening these days in Denmark?
Thanks, Milad. I think it's important that before we even discuss about minority rights and racism, that we identify the historical significance of the hijab and why Muslim women ever wear it, and Muslim girls as well, and how there has to be a balance between a choice and what is perceived to be a choice. I guess my opinion stands that hijab is not a choice. Many adults who do wear it are not given that choice in most cases because they're coerced into wearing it. And going back to the historical significance of it, there are many hadiths that do quote that, it was only Muslim women who had to wear it at the time, and you would actively prevent slave women from wearing it because Muslim women are considered to be chaste. And then other narrations talking about how it was Muhammad's companion who saw one of his wives basically going to the bathroom, but obviously there were no bathrooms then or private spaces. And not soon later, the verse to cover up your body was revealed. And in the Quran, it wasn't specifically or explicitly said that it has to be your hair. It only was then talked about in the hadith and the practices after. But if we look at the current narrative, many countries, especially before Iran, like 1980s, did not have hijab as a uniform. Like, I come from Tanzania, and before the 1980s, hijab was never part of the school uniform. It just came in after the Iranian Revolution, but also people's efforts into spreading a more moderate version of religion in countries where they're not Muslim majority countries. And that has kind of taken an effect in Europe now, obviously with migration. And I can see how, racism does exist in all parts of the world, and that there are literal anti-Muslim bigots. But this concept, but the discussion we're having today about the hijab has more to do with the autonomy of young girls, or whether or not they have the autonomy to decide, and what the hijab means for them. When you put it on a young girl, you push her onto wearing the burden of shame, honor, and also purity culture. You also tell that girl that the hijab is there to protect you from sexual advances. It's not about covering your hair, it's all about protecting yourself from sexual advances and controlling you, and especially when it's indoctrinated into you from a young age. I
That's
mean,
that's that's very true, and I think that's the key point. Like, the problem we have in Western, sorry for interrupt, Zara, is like
okay.
we see like like there are like many people, like many activists who support the immigrants and like asylum seeker rights in Europe. They say like hijab is a way of dress. So basically, it's a choice of people to choose how to dress up. I mean, what sort of clothes they choosing, what color they choosing, what part of body they would like to cover, and which part they don't want to cover. So basically, they just see it as something they personally choose, and therefore we're supposed to respect it. They don't realize like hijab is not a way of dressing. It's just basically a tool against women to promote segregation and obligation on women. In Islam, in Quran clearly said like men are guardian of women. So basically, you as a Muslim woman do not really control and do not really own your own body, and that's how hijab works in like Islamic theological in Islamic theories. These days, specifically after the Iranian Revolution, as you mentioned, and like the rise of political Islam and the rise of Islamic terrorism, hijab is a tool to oppress the society, to like keep the Islamic dictatorship in power, like what's happening in Turkey with Erdogan, like in Iran, Islamic regime, in Afghanistan, Taliban, and there's like so many other examples. So basically, it's a very misunderstanding at the very best side to see hijab as a way of dressing and as a choice that people might choose it or might not choose it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would separate that into two parts when talking about adults and when talking about children. Especially if you see an adult woman, you expect her to have an understanding of what she's wearing, and that she has the choice to wear it, or she has a choice to remove it. In many cases, adult women who are wearing the hijab are shunned. In Iran, they would go to jail. In other countries, even in Europe, by their families, be killed for removing the hijab. But also, the big part is the shaming that affects your friends, your community, where you're from, your family, and somehow the entire community that was meant to support you turns against you for just removing a piece of cloth. So if the reaction we get from removing the hijab are so intense, then it's not really a choice. But we can still give it to adults that, okay, well, you have a decision to make. And the fact that you're making one to wear this every day, even if it's ingrained onto you, is different to then preventing children from actually being children, because they don't decide. They might see their mothers, their sisters, their community, much like myself. I started wearing it at 8. They might see their community, people, women in the community, or other girls wearing it, or even at a younger age. It was always a competition of who wears it the earliest, not realizing how much it holds you back from physical activity. Even if you're not a sporty person, if you have to run, it is not the best. It is not the best, I guess, attire to run with, but also the heat. And you're not given the choice to ever remove it once you start wearing it. I think a lot of people who come out and say, "Oh, I picked the hijab for myself. No one forced me." Well, where did the concept of hijab even come in? And why do you only wear it around certain men and not around all men, including your brothers? So the idea is in you that you're wearing it around certain men, because, and it's not because of God, it's because you're trying to protect yourself from people who could be attracted to you. And when you raise a child like that, not forgetting you're raising a child to also follow these rules, otherwise they're going to hellfire. That's such a key part to why it is child abuse. When you tell young girls, if you don't do this, you're not a pure woman, or this is the ideal way that you should be living. And if you don't, you will go to hell. You're not really giving them a choice. But what really annoys me or what really irritates me is when a lot of Western women or men come up to me and say that hijab is a choice. Like, I have a friend who wears it and she's an adult and her parents don't wear it. Great, good. What about the millions of women that don't have a choice or get imprisoned for that choices? What do you think happens to young girls who decide they don't want to wear it and are coerced into it and kept into that straight line or in a box because, they've been told that this is the acceptable format, this is how we're going to respect you. And in return, you also create the minds of young boys to only respect women who wear a hijab. You're judging, you're already treating a woman as an object. If kids go to school seeing their mom wear a hijab, then we should then equally allow kids to go to school wearing makeup and lipstick because their moms wear makeup and lipstick and contour their faces. But if one form of sexual objectification is not okay, why are we okay with the other one? And why are there no equal standards?
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Actually, it's like the when you live in a specific society, when there's specific ideology controlling you from very childhood, then obviously it may affect on your choice when you're an adult, when you're mature. What I'm saying is um in Sweden, for example, there is a law that you as a parents cannot beat your children, or children supposed to have enough food. So basically, if you as a parent go to the commune and ask for example, food for money for food, the government is responsible to pay the minimum so the children wouldn't remain hungry or do not go to school while they still haven't had any breakfast. So what I'm saying is there is a sort of protection law, even though that decision might be against the parents' will. How on earth is it's fine to promote or impose a specific ideology on a children who live in Islamic families? It's like, if for example, if you smoke, yeah, they always say you're supposed to smoke in the way that the children, your kids, is not affected by your bad habit. If we see hijab and religion, generally speaking, as something destructive, specifically for women, for homosexuals, for ex-Muslim or secular member of a family, then how on earth you don't do anything and remain silent regarding the hijab for children? Hijab is just not a piece of dress. It's actually control the way a small girl behave, controls the relationship, the sort of act she would have at school or some other public places. So it's really obvious that we need some law to protect the children from the religion. What do you think about that, Zara?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, we do need laws to protect children, but at the same time, there would be a counter argument saying, all parents raise their children differently, and it's very cultural as well. And whenever we talk about culture, it is so stigmatized to criticize the bad parts, especially if you're in the majority side and the minority culture is what you see as destructive. And I think the West, in particular, a lot of the left, a lot of the left, where you'd expect liberal values, try to celebrate regressive ideas that come from Islam because they don't want to offend the minority, but don't actually have a holistic vision of where are we actually supporting women. When we start, having World Hijab Day of us wearing hijab, Are we actually wearing it for our entire life? Do you guys want to do that instead of one day? How about you wear it from when you're 8 to like when you're dead instead of promoting it on one day? If you're actually willing to wear it, then fine, do it. You don't, if you think hijab is a choice, then it should be a choice for people who are not Muslims as well. It should be a choice for men as well. What is really interesting is, I think, a viral TikTok that went out with a man wearing a hijab, and all the Muslim women were like, "See, men taking this away from us." And obviously, and that's where I used a lot of, what if he wants to wear it? If you don't want people to criticize what you wear, why are you criticizing what they wear? And there was no consistency there. It's like they could not see it. It was an insult of their faith. But so is removing the hijab an insult of their faith. And if that's how they see it, if that's how exclusive those rights are, then how is it a choice? It's not a choice. And young girls who basically, if you won't let a young girl travel on their own and make that decision for themselves, why would you put them in a hijab? Like, why would you say that she has a choice to not wear it when there is everybody around her wearing it, when there's pressure around her, including communities? It could not be the family. I mean, there are instances, and very, very few, where young girls may be raised, you know, as Muslims, but very liberal Muslims whose parents don't wear it, are coerced by their family or friends. Or a lot of it religious indoctrination. Like the whole idea is be loyal to your God. But if you understand what the hijab was invented for, and it was not as an accessory, it wasn't a colorful hairpin, you're not allowed to put makeup. There's so many other restrictions that most people do not follow, but would still advocate that, hey, don't touch my hijab, like the hashtag, don't touch my hijab.
Hands off my
If you're
hijab.
not
Yeah,
if you're not doing it if you're not doing it the right way, then you don't really get to say how other people should do it as well, because you're not being a good Muslim. So why are you defending the rights of this younger girls who actually do not even know what they're going to eat for breakfast tomorrow? You pushing that onto them and then saying, "Oh, it's a choice. Our kids choose it."
true. The thing is, like, I would like to point out we still have honor killing, even in West Europe, even in Sweden. Like Fadima is like one good example. The thing is, like, of course, like, these girls on Islamic families are under pressure. Of course, they would like to follow what their parents want them to do. Of course, if they disobey these sort of rules, they're supposed to wait for consequences. So how on earth there is no law to protect these children being like deprived from their basic rights by their parents, by their families, and they say like it's their own choice? People under 18, they do not have that sort of choice. They don't have any religion. You can choose what you would like to believe after age of 18, but before that, children, teenagers, they got no religion whatsoever, and that's supposed to be recognized by the government. We need law. We're suffering from the lack of law, I would say, to protect the ex-Muslim kids inside the like Muslim families. I would like to also point out the political part. Like there are specific governments have like sort of connections with mostly what's so called lefties in Europe to promote Islamism in Europe. They have mosques, they run seminars. I do remember, like, Zara, it was I think it was 3 years ago. They had the 1st of February as the World Hijab Day, and there was like a seminar in the mosque in Stockholm at the Jakobsberg, and there was a, like, one of the speakers, one of the panelists was a well-known Islamic figure who was the reporter for the Press TV, which has the close connection to the Islamic regime of Iran, and she was invited from London to Stockholm to be one of the speakers. So it shows, like, how they are really connected. We're not just talking about, like, an ideology that some people may believe in it. We talk about specific political movement that there are people make money out of it, and who is the victim? The children, the girls, the women, the ex-Muslim, the gay member of the families are the victims. This is supposed to be recognized by the government, and we need law. We need specific law to protect the rights of those who don't want to obey and follow the Islamic rules at the Muslim families.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd only add that Sweden particularly has a way of not going into conflict and avoiding them. So if they see something's wrong, they're just going to be like, nope. And then that's what eventually gives rise to the far right, because they're the only ones who talk about it, obviously having very different intentions when you could very well be left leaning, talk about liberation, and also be nuanced and balanced in your views, talking about what are harmful ideas. I'm not saying that the Swedish culture does not need to change. I feel like there's so many cultures that need to evolve and grow and accommodate different people. But having specific privileges that are harmful to children, but also to minorities within those minorities, you're only then giving rise to extremism on their side. And this goes into like any political agenda. When you don't talk of dissent and when you don't acknowledge that there are certain ideas, whether it's Islamism, whether it's far right political agenda or xenophobia, when we don't talk about this, we're enabling them to continue to be fostered. But I think with Islam specifically, a lot of people who would even like to say something hesitate from saying that, because a lot of the news that you mentioned, kids being taken away, and it's not only with Muslims, it's any kid who's being abused, been taken away. But the Muslim media has propagated it as if it's only Muslim kids. It's only Muslim kids that have been taken away. They're being discriminatory to immigrants, but not recognizing that there are Christian immigrants who've had their kids taken away. And this is Christian by label, because some cultures do normalize abusing children as part of disciplining them, versus a softer approach or more educational or informative approach. And the whole the whole propaganda has now created Muslims to be the ultimate victim in any scenario, even in their own countries as well. Whether it's liberal Muslims, whether it's moderate Muslims, or whether it's Islamists,
Yeah.
they're always victims in their own little scenarios. One group or the other is always victimizing one
Yes,
of
they
them.
always say like, these, they are like all the people be born in Middle East in Islam-stricken countries. They say like these people are Muslims, and like any time that they would like to, how to say, protect the rights of these people, they say like Muslims are under pressure. I don't know who said like, people like me, people like you. Atia is watching the program at the moment, and most of these ex-Muslim that joined the organization all around the world, who said these people are Muslim or Islams, or they Islam is their choice. And as you said, like, Muslims always are the victims. In case that you really care about the asylum protection or like immigrants' rights, you really need to be against Islamism, because in most of the cases, Islam is the reason these people left their own hometown. Like, look what happened yesterday in Iraq. Shia Islamists are fighting each other, and the whole city, the whole capital was like was involved in a sort of a civil war. 25 to 30 people at least being killed in one day because of the fight of the Shia Islamists. So how on earth, if you want to protect the rights of the immigrants, you promote Islamism and saying like Islam is their own choice? What I would like to point out about far right is, I don't really think they do really care about the immigrants and the human rights and secularism and protecting women's rights and etc. etc. They are, how to say, populist who would like to be in power no matter how. So basically, I don't see any difference between them and the lefties who promote Islamism and see Islam as an identification of the people who coming from Middle East. So far rights and the lefties, like Islamists and racists, they are like twin brothers. They like, promote and like justify each other. They're both bad, I guess, for the people, specifically for the people coming from Middle East, I would say.
Yeah, I think with the far right, at least you expect them to be bigoted. You don't expect the left to be bigoted, and that is what is shocking and surprising to all of us who are left-leaning, who actually do care about immigration enough to want integration and to want a better future for the future generations. And I would also talk about, I think one of the good parts about Swedish educational systems are critical thinking that you're not normally taught in a lot of developing countries, or countries that have are a theocracy. And I think that is one of the good parts. But then you've not dared to create a safe environment for kids who do critically think. I mean, I don't know what it was like for you as a child, but for us, whenever you would question anything, or you would ask a very innocent question about God, about religion, you're silenced. You're not allowed to critically think. And then when you go outside your environment and you question those uh, ideas, you can challenge them. But if you did it in your own country or in your own extremist environment, you would be shunned, you would be ignored, you would be asked to be forced into submission, in some cases, maybe exorcism as well. And you're like the devil. You're promoting false information for just asking questions, because people should not be able to think about it. I think one of the worst things that are happening now is, obviously, there have been ex-Muslims who have been coming out. There have been liberal Muslims who have um, talked about reforming Islam or finding their own interpretations that are more peaceful and do not disagree with and do not agree with the Islamist ideas. But I've seen a lot of religious scholars turn that around and use words like toxic masculinity and secular feminism, not the way the left uses it. They would use it to pull you back to Islam by saying secular feminist is harmful because they don't want you to be closer to your religion, and that they use their radical feminist thoughts into it and confuse what secular feminism actually means, because these are the words the young generation is actually learning, and that would be because of social media. Like more ex-Muslims, more, like, not even ex-Muslims, more Muslims thinking, thinking, just finding their own path is increasing. And because that's happening, a lot of religious preachers are like, why are we getting low numbers in the mosque? Why are we getting many people questioning? So let's create a narrative where we talk about this liberal ideas, but we pretend to adopt parts of it and still keep our children away from the other parts, because then they would think, and then they would leave, or they would be misinformed. And in countries like Sweden, where you do have accessibility to, yes, one, the internet, but also to other people who were allowed to have an ex-Muslim group in public, or like this show, for instance.
Yeah. One of the
Y-
disadvantage and the harmful effect of Islam on children, as you said, is like they do not, I mean, they do not let you think critical. I do remember, like, when I was in Iran, there was like so many, how to say, horrific stories of what's gonna happen to the people who disobey Allah in hell. Just imagine, like, you're 10 years old, or like you're 12 years old. You heard lots of stories. As a girl, they say, like, if you do not really have hijab in the other world, the God, the Allah would hang you out of your head and burn you alive. So that's how the Allah would torture you if you don't really cover your body and your hair. And as you said, Zara, exactly, you as a children, you as a child, are always like, you've been grown up in fear. So basically, you don't even think about the basic of the religion. You don't think critical. It's really tough. It become really crucial for you to like to remove this sort of ideology from your mind when you grown up, when you're a teenage or something like that. So Islam come by fear, and that's exactly what they're doing by by the children's mind, and that's exactly what we're saying, like, religion for children is child abuse. Hijab for children is child abuse. Abusing is not just like, physical abusing. When you don't let the critical thinking be learned by children, when they always like promote fear among children, that's also uh, basically the sort of child abuse against children. And it's very common, it's very normal in the country, like, as I said, Iran, to abuse the children mentally, to force in a small girl to cover the body and their hair. And in the public school and in the public media, there are people saying, like, the whole body of a girl is like, it's like a it's like a sexual organ. So there is no basically differences between a hair or hand with the vagina. So if you show, for example, a part of your hand, it's the same as you showing your vagina to some other people, and that's how they promote it. And they say it in public, in the public schools, and they say in public media, and that's how like they promote this sort of ideology among society. So you can imagine what happened to the children's mind if they're going to the school over there. And the how to say the part that makes me very like feel sorry or like kind of sad or angry is that the same scenario is happening in Sweden. There is like Islamic schools here. There is like small girls that you see in summer supposed to cover the body and the hair, very small, 10 years old, 8 years old, and go to school by that hijab, so the Islamic remains safe in Sweden. That's bizarre. That's bizarre, and I think we really need to have a law about it.
Yeah, I guess I just want everybody who's listening to imagine what it was like for me as a girl when I was growing up, 5, 6, 7, 8. I started wearing the hijab at 8. The things that I was told is any strand of hair you show after you're meant to wear the hijab, which is the age of 9, you'll be hung by each strand of your hair in hellfire. You're really young at this age, and then you go on and you cover everything. You cover your hands, long sleeves. You and my family wasn't as crazy, but I still had to wear it. But it was a mix between the mosque, the Islamic schools, and home. And obviously, at home, my family would learn from the mosque and the Islamic school as well. So we were all sent this information, and we all accepted it. And then you would so that's one, like, you're meant to cover up. Also, you don't actually grow boobs at the age of 8. You're flat chested, you're young. You don't even think about this until you're about 11 or 12 for most girls. And I could be wrong. I'm not a biologist. But I just Googled prepubescent ages. And it's usually when you're 11 or 12 is when you start puberty in most cases on average. But imagine stopping all of that. But even if you grow boobs, it's a natural part of your body, like you're growing tall. And it's so awkward for a girl to even go buy her first sports bra, for instance. All of these things, as women, as girls experience, and as women have had to talk about, have now been have now been escalated early onwards when you put the hijab on. And also, you don't talk about it because you're going to be fully covered. So, who's going to see what you wear? You forget how to appreciate your body as well as a girl. You can't ride bicycles anymore. I mean, I was allowed to, and I'm not talking about my personal experience, but if we look at it holistically, if you're wearing a hijab, it's not just a head covering as well, it's the full
Bicycle is
black way.
forbidden by law in Iran, just to let you know. So you as a girl cannot
Really?
you can ride, you cannot ride. There is like a movement of riding bicycle
Wow.
right for women. That's horrible, I would say. Yeah. So you're
Wow.
absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. You as a girl, you cannot have like in a normal life. You cannot go to gym. You cannot have a bicycle. You cannot have like like a normal relationship with your male classmates, etc., etc. So hijab is like deprivating children from their basic rights. I would say it's not a choice whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, for us, like, my older sisters, wearing a hijab, one of them started at 12, one of them started at 8. We were all riding, they were riding bicycles. I was a princess. I was with my books. So that was my activity. But then my parents weren't that strict, and I come from a conservative family, but relatively quite liberal. But running the charity that I do, you will have plenty of stories about girls never having a choice, even at the age of 25. And I think it's so important that when we talk about the hijab, we think of the people that are being forced and what precedents we're setting as Westerners, including myself, to appropriate or celebrate the hijab. You can, like I said, you can still, as adults, go like, okay, you're an adult, you know what you're doing, or at least I think you do. But when children come into play, or when you start celebrating the hijab, you insult the women who have been forced to wear it and have fought and have been in prison now because they've decided this is not for me. But so it's not a choice. If removing it is not a choice, wearing it isn't, absolutely not a choice.
That's
And
so
I
true.
think that's what people don't understand. And I
Mhm.
think they just fetish. I think it's kind of like a fetish to virtue signal Muslims and minorities, but you don't realize the harm is being what harm is being done to the younger girls who ever think of dissenting, who have no safe spaces anymore because, you know, whenever they leave, I've had so many girls who've taken off their hijab in schools, but now the ban will increase more vigilant behaviors on Muslim parents to impose it even more. I mean, it's really difficult to go like, do I accept the hijab ban for kids and do I not? 90% of me says yes. And then there's a 10% of it is, doesn't that create more vigilant behavior? Doesn't that continue that? And it puts, I'm sure it's a difficult decision for everyone, but I do not accept the protest done on behalf of the ban in the way that it is, and kind of
Exactly.
making the narrative that it's anti-immigration versus, you know, they don't understand our children or they don't understand our culture. They're also assuming that people are dumb for some reason. They're assuming that people can't read or write or research or know more about the hijab and see the atrocities, and that they're like, nope, they don't understand it, they don't know it. So we're going to continue protesting and call them bigots because we're minorities and we have the upper hand in this, which is so unfair. Because in Muslim majority countries, if in Iran hijab, you have to wear a hijab by default. Can Westerners come in and then request we don't wear the hijab? Can I go to Iran and then go like, oh yeah, I'm not going to wear the hijab because you're opposing me as a minority and that you're being racist towards me? But that never happens.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, the thing is, like, what actually I would like to point out, what it makes me even, like, like lose my trust even more on this sort of like demonstration. The things that we had in Copenhagen is like, the organizers are the mosque being sponsored most of the cases by the government in West or by the government inside the Middle East. So it's not like, NGOs. It's not like something that people do it by their own choice. This is like, specific governments who promote Islamism and how to call on Islamists, and like some people can be called as Muslim, can be, they come to street and do the demonstration. This is not something be done naturally by the society. There are people, there are money, there are politics behind it, so they would actually like, how to say, motivate people to come to street and demonstrate against such law. What I'm saying is like, demonstration, as you said, I'm very against it, specifically in the case that it's organized by a mosque. It even makes it worse. So, and untrustful, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important that a lot of people who are marching to actually know what they're marching for and what they're standing for, not because it's offending the Muslims, but because they're marching for perhaps the law that would keep women at home because they're not allowed to wear hijab in schools. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think the intention, because there have been cases, especially for adult women, when France was trying to ban the hijab, like not the burqa, but the hijab, and a lot of similar other European countries, which I don't agree with, again, especially for women, even if I disagree with the hijab, because I think there are cases where we would be hurting women from actually going out of their homes to safe spaces. But I think that intention really matters. But a lot of people have then gone like, oh no, you're just against Muslims. Even if France's law was not on hijab banning, but it was on all religious symbols. And, you know, it was always not, it's always about the Muslims, it's always about the minorities, not the Jews, you know, not the men who have to wear a kippah religiously. It's only about the Muslims. As
True.
somehow, you know, as if somehow if you went to Muslim majority countries, like they would listen to you and then go like, oh, okay, you want alcohol in Iran? Yeah, let me get that for you because, you know, that is your culture. So I will accept you as
Yeah.
you are. The hypocrisy is sheer. And I don't think it's wrong to say that if you would want to go to a place that has that, do it. It does feel dishonest to me to accept it because I don't want your kids growing up there because I want a better chance for your kids. And I think just conversations like these and putting our voices forward and having different opinions also to give more nuanced positions is so important for kids to make their own choices, for young girls to see that there are other people who have thrived in their lives. And even if they go to hell, they're still happy. Like it's only hair. Like nobody's asking you to wear a bikini. Like it's not like I think the common not misconception, but the common attacks when women who remove the hijab, even Muslim women who remove the hijab, get is, oh, now you're a slut. Yeah, you're a prostitute. And
Or you're seeking attention. You would like
yeah,
to show off your
exactly.
body, and you seeking attention. So
The amount
psychologically ill, they say. Yeah.
the amount of dick pics I have received, after removing the hijab, we're talking about it, as somehow that's how they're going to control me. Let's harass you because you're a slut now and you're not a Muslim, so you're okay to harass. Or that, you're a woman and this is how I treat women, but not Muslim women, obviously, not the ones who cover up. And that idea, imagine that idea doesn't come as an adult. That idea comes from a child. That idea comes from a child who has no idea what it means to be a respectful adult and how to respect women's bodies.
That's so true. What I'm saying is like it's now 45 minutes we're talking. We have an election on September. There's an upcoming election in September. I was just like wondering which party would be the best to vote for, and I was just like watching some of the debates through TV. None of these political parties, like the most important ones in parliament, saying anything about these sort of issues. Like, I see myself, me, Zara, I see myself as firmly as left, but how on earth I'm supposed to vote for a political party that promotes Islamism in Sweden, Islamism that I ran away from it, and I cannot go back to my country because of these Islamists, and now they have the best relationship with the left party, and how on earth I'm supposed to vote for the far rights or rights who are against the how to say immigrants rights in Sweden. So it's like a very controversial question for me what I'm supposed to do. And I think it's a question for many of us at the moment to which political party is supposed to vote. Shall we vote at all, or we just boycott the election as many do these days? You know what? The leader of the left party is an Iranian girl. She was born in Iran. She was at the age of 3 or 4, she moved to Sweden, and now she's the leader of the left party, and she doesn't say a word about the Islamism and Islamic oppression on the women, on the ex-Muslim, and on the people who do not like to live under the Islamic dictatorship. She ran away from Islamic dictatorship. She doesn't have any hijab. She had a chance to study in Sweden. They could be a chance that she was forced to get married at the age of 10 or 13, which is common in some part of Iran still. And she was lucky enough to get away from those Islamic laws and Sharias and get a chance to study in Sweden. And now she's still promoting and work side by side by the Islamists. That's very sad to say, but that's how it is. So I think that shows how important to have a podcast and a program like this, to have an organization like Ex-Muslim, to how and Secular Hijab is the organization that you're running. You and Armin, I think, running Secular Hijab is well done indeed.
No,
Okay,
no,
you're gonna. No, my point is, it's really
I,
important to have like such organizations. You can correct me now.
yeah, I was just gonna say no. It's faithless hijabi.
Faithless Hijabis, sorry.
Uh,
Yeah, Faithless Hijabis.
Armin does secular jihadist that I was speaking at once, in a few episodes a long time ago.
Yeah.
But a lot of
So
our,
you have
I think the
secular
name
hijabis
faithless.
and you have secular jihadis and faithless hijabis.
That's
Okay,
such a rookie mistake. You mixed up hijab and jihadis.
sorry for
Um,
that.
No, no, all good. I thought it was funny. No, I think like the name Faithless Hijabi also came from a lot of people, like, just the whole topic that we're talking about, like being forced to wear a hijab and still being faithless. And there are numerous people like that. I mean, I think most Iranians I've met in
Exactly.
Sweden,
Yeah, yeah.
whether they've moved now or later, they're agnostic or they're atheist or they do not give a fuck. They honestly, and coming from
They're
where I
forced to
did,
have
we
hijab.
look,
Yeah.
Yeah, like in Tanzania, like Shias are a minority, but we literally look at Iran like gods. Like it's so crazy. And then I tell my dad, I'm like, do you know I've met so many Iranian friends who were, who come from Sayyid families as well, and they're atheists.
Yeah.
And I don't think he could recognize beyond that. He's just like, no, no, they're all, Iran is still good. It's just corrupted young people. And I'm like, okay, you think that.
All right.
Um,
Okay, then, Zara, it's 50 minutes of the podcast. If you would like to sum up, you have some minutes. Otherwise, I think we can end it. That's for today. Hopefully, we're going to have more programs and more podcasts in future. But I think that's enough for today. If you have anything to sum up, I would be very pleased to hear that.
I think I just want to say that when you do make decisions about voting in Sweden, my natural response will be vote with the party that you agree most ideas with. But I think we're in a situation where we need to be forward looking, and we need to kind of be aware of where our loyalties lie. I personally am not voting, even if I'm eligible to vote. I am not voting. And I just don't feel confident enough to trust them. I do, however, want to call out the hypocrisy of the Islamist party, or rather the immigration party called Nyans, which talks about a party open for everyone. However, imams should be able to say that homosexuality is not allowed, Muhammad drawings are not allowed, and Islam, and basically a law for Islamophobia and blasphemy not allowed. Um, Talk about free speech, how the Imam is meant to say homosexuality is not allowed, but we cannot draw Muhammad. Anyway, that was pretty much it in terms of latest news
Yeah.
or updates.
Let's see what's going. I mean, I haven't made up my mind yet, but I don't. I don't really know like now which political party I'm supposed to vote for. Am I going to vote or not? Maybe the next podcast we will talk about it a bit more. But thank you for today, Zara. Thank you for being in this program. And thank
Right.
you all the people who watched it live: Leonardo, Afsane, Amir, Pakbaz, Atiye, Vincent. Thank you very much for your comments. And the guys, for those of you like listening to the podcast on Spotify, please make sure that you share it with your friends, family, and the loved ones, and spread the word. And let us know what you think about the content of the podcast and what you think about the things we've been talking about. Thank you very much, and keep your eyes open for the next programs. Thank you.